Before we talk about how he died, we have to understand who he was. Christopher Wallace grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, a neighborhood that didn't offer many second chances. His mother, Violetta, worked 2 jobs, raised him mostly alone. By the time he was 12, he was selling crack on the corner, not because he was bad, because the corner was the only school that stayed open past midnight. But the boy could rap. Lord, could he rap. By his early 20s, he'd gone from a wanted man, literally a fugitive, to the biggest rapper on the East Coast. The Notorious B.I.G, Biggie Smalls. They called him the King of New York, and that title wasn't ceremonial. He had earned every syllable of it. His debut album, Ready to Die, dropped in 1994. It didn't just sell, it changed the conversation. Critics who had never set foot in Brooklyn suddenly understood what it felt like to live there. That's the power of a real poet. But success in that world came with a shadow, and that shadow had a name: the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. A beef that started with words between record labels, Death Row Records on the West versus Bad Boy Records on the East, and slowly turned into something far more dangerous. By 1996, Tupac Shakur had been shot and killed in Las Vegas. The temperature was already boiling, and now it was March 9th, 1997, and Biggie was in Los Angeles. He didn't have to be there. That's the thing that will haunt people forever. He didn't have to be there. Biggie had come to Los Angeles to promote his upcoming double album, Life After Death. He attended the Soul Train Music Awards, and then, the way these nights tend to go, the party kept going. He ended up at an after-party hosted by Vibe magazine at the Petersen Automotive Museum, a gorgeous building on Wilshire Boulevard, famous for cars, but about to become infamous for something else. The night was too big, too crowded, the kind of event where you can feel the energy shift in a room before you can explain why. People packed from wall to wall, music loud enough to swallow a conversation whole. Celebrities, industry people, hangers-on, and people nobody could account for were all mixed together in one space. Then the fire marshal showed up. They were shutting it down, too many people inside, fire codes violated. The crowd spilled onto Wilshire Boulevard. That's when the situation went from lively to complicated. Gene Deal, Puffy's head of security, understood the problem immediately. This was exactly what you didn't want. A crowd of hundreds, in the dark, on a street, with cars waiting and no clear control of the perimeter. There's a phrase for what Gene was thinking, and it is what we call, "you're a sitting duck." Gene ran downstairs to make sure the vehicles were positioned correctly, right in front, so the moment the principals stepped out, they could step directly into the cars and go. That was the plan. Get in, get out, no delay. He gave weapons to trusted men before leaving Biggie's side. He gave Paul, head of their security contract, one of his guns. He gave D-Rock, one of Biggie's Brooklyn boys, another one. He told D-Rock, "Watch Big, I'll be right back." He said them in confidence. He believed they meant something. He'd find out later just how much weight those words would have to carry and whether they were enough. When you've been in security long enough, you stop seeing a crowd as people. You start seeing it as geometry: who's moving toward you, who's standing still, who doesn't belong in the pattern. Gene Deal noticed him immediately. A man, blue and white shirt, coming from a direction nobody else was coming from. The police, the fire department, the ambulances, they were all on the other side of the building. Their side of the sidewalk was basically empty. So why was this man walking toward them? Alone, calm, and out of place. Gene stepped behind a pillar, counted the man's steps, calculated the distance, watched him close the gap between himself and Puffy's vehicle. When Gene felt the distance had shrunk to maybe 3 or 4 car lengths, he stepped out from behind that pillar. Gun visible, eyes locked. The man stopped. He looked at Gene, he looked at the gun. And then, without a word, he turned around and walked back the way he came. No argument, no explanation. Not even a word to say, "What's the problem, brother?" Not even a flinch of surprise. Just a pivot, a retreat. The clean, practiced movement of someone who had encountered this kind of wall before and knew exactly when to pull back. Jean said later he wasn't a Muslim. A real Muslim would have said something like offering a greeting, asked about the hostility. This man said nothing. He looked at the weapon, he understood the language, and he left. It should have ended there. The threat had been identified and neutralized. The cars were ready. All they had to do was get in and go. But then Puffy started walking around the parking lot, collecting phone numbers, making plans for a pool party the next day, chatting up girls in the parking lot of a crime scene waiting to happen. Jean was losing his mind. Finally, they loaded up. It was time to move. The convoy lined up along the museum, Puffy's car in front, Biggie's car right behind. Standard formation. Jean Deal positioned himself on the running board of Puffy's Suburban, riding on the outside of the vehicle, the way protection details do when they need eyes on the street. Then Puffy told him to get inside. Jean, get in the car. We don't need that. 6 words that may have cost a man his life. Jean pushed back. He wasn't trying to be difficult. He was trying to do his job. Riding the outside of a vehicle in a hostile environment is a protective technique. It gives you reach, visibility, and the ability to respond instantly to a threat approaching from any angle. Getting inside the car meant getting blind. But Puffy was firm. Get in the car, or you're done with bad boy. Jean got in the car. He immediately gave the driver, Kenny, one instruction: run the next 3 lights. He'd just taken a DEA surveillance course 2 weeks earlier. He knew the move. If you're being followed, run 3 consecutive lights. Anyone behind you has to make a choice: stop or reveal themselves. The convoy stays together, or the tail shows its hand. Kenny ran the lights. Every vehicle in the convoy followed, except one. Biggie's car stayed at the light, just for a moment, just long enough. He had been parked there all night. That's what Jean Deal would say years later, and it changes everything. Think about what that means. This wasn't a drive-by. That word drive-by implies something spontaneous. Someone sees a target, makes a decision in motion, acts on impulse. This was not that. This was a man who parked his car, who waited, who knew before the night began that at some point, Biggie Smalls would be coming out of that building. That level of planning doesn't happen by accident. Someone knew the itinerary, someone knew the vehicles, someone knew the route. The man Jean had seen earlier, the one in the blue and white shirt, the one who walked toward Puffy's car and then retreated, Jean believed that was the same operation. A scout, someone checking positions, confirming targets, relaying information to the man in the parked car. When Biggie's car sat at that light, the dark vehicle pulled out of the parking space. Smooth, measured, it pulled up alongside, and then came the shot. 4 bullets entered the right side of Christopher Wallace's vehicle. 1 struck him in the hip, 1 struck a hand, 1 struck his shoulder. The 4th entered his chest. He was 24 years old. In the seconds after the shots, everything fractured. Tony, one of the security team, told Jean, somebody's pointing a gun at Biggie. The car that was supposed to react didn't. The driver, Kenny, didn't stop, didn't reverse, didn't do a U-turn. He said, "What you say, Tony?" as if needing the information repeated while a man was being murdered. Then he panicked and accelerated in the wrong direction. Jean was screaming, "Turn around, turn around, turn the car around." Kenny stopped the car in front of Biggie's vehicle. Jean and Puffy ran out. Jean saw Biggie in that car at that moment. He doesn't talk about what he saw in detail. You can tell when someone has stored a memory somewhere they don't want to visit. Jean and Tony jumped into their Suburban and tried to chase the shooter. They followed what they could see, turned up a hill and found nothing. No car, no taillights, no trace. Whoever did this knew how to disappear. Back at Biggie's car, the driver had put it in park and run. Every door of the vehicle was left open. Everyone had fled. Except Jean would note G-Money, who wasn't even security. who stayed. The people who were supposed to protect him ran. Christopher Wallace was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. He was pronounced dead at 1:15 a.m. Nobody was ever charged for the murder of Christopher Wallace. Let that sentence sit for a moment. One of the most famous men in American music, killed in the middle of Los Angeles, with witnesses, with security, with cars full of people who could see what happened, and in over 25 years, not a single arrest, not one conviction. The LAPD investigated. There were theories, there were suspects, there were accusations that linked the killing to death row records, to gang affiliations, even in whispered corners of the internet, to corrupt police officers who may have been on payroll the night it happened. None of it led to a courtroom Gene Deal. The man who says he looked the scout in the eyes and turned him away has spent years telling this story, trying to get someone to listen, trying to explain that this wasn't random, that Biggie didn't just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, that someone planned this, that someone waited. He says the man in the blue and white shirt, the scout, is the man who killed Biggie, not just a stranger passing by, the triggerman, or at minimum the advance for the man who pulled the trigger. Whether that's true, we can't say for certain. What we can say is this: Gene Deal was there, and most of the people who were supposed to be there weren't. His second album, Life After Death, dropped on March 25, 1997. 16 days after he was killed. He never heard it in its final form, never held the CD, never watched it go to number one. It went to number one. There is something unbearable about that, about a man who spent his whole career writing about death, you're nobody till somebody kills you, and then becoming exactly that story. It almost feels scripted. And maybe that's why the conspiracy theories never die, because it feels too on the nose, too perfectly tragic, like the world bent itself around the narrative of his own lyrics. But Christopher Wallace wasn't a narrative, he was a person. He had a mother who raised him alone in Brooklyn. He had a daughter. He had a son. He had a laugh people say could fill a room. He had plans, tours, albums, a film career he was curious about. He had a future. The case remains open. The LAPD has never officially closed it. Somewhere in a file, there are names that no one has been willing or able to turn into justice. Somewhere, someone knows what happened on Wilshire Boulevard on the night of March 9, 1997. And somewhere, in an alternative version of reality, where security didn't get pulled inside a car, where a convoy ran 3 consecutive lights together, where a scout was detained instead of just watched, and finally somewhere, Christopher Wallace is still alive, but that's not the version we got.
If you believe stories like these deserve to be told, help support this growing channel, subscribe, press the like button, and be part of the journey from the very beginning.